Hey guys, tonight we begin not with war, not with conquest, but with something much more personal, what it feels like to wake up in the Mongol Empire. You've just opened your eyes somewhere near the Onon River. Your blanket is a layer of wool that smells like a damp yak. Your pillow, a saddlebag that probably once belonged to someone braver. The sun hasn't risen, and neither has your ability to feel your toes. There's a thin sheet of ice in your nose, and the sound of heavy breathing right next to your head. It's not another soldier, it's your horse. Of course it is. He is your bedmate, your heater, your ride, your only source of body heat, and if supplies run out as dinner. He breathes directly into your mouth, then steps on your coat while you're trying to stand. He does not apologize. Mongol horses never apologize. Your camp is already moving. No one calls out orders. No one hands you breakfast. They just ride off like smoke. A 10-year-old gallops past, chewing meat, carrying a bow longer than his body. His saddle is older than he is, and he's been riding longer than you've been conscious. You try to climb onto your own horse. He moves. You miss. He steps sideways. You try again. No one waits. No one laughs. This is not a coming-of-age story. This is logistics on horseback. If you think horseback riding is romantic, if you think Genghis Khan was just a great general, if you think you'd last even one morning out here, you're in for a cold, fermented, saddle-chafed surprise. So before we begin, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you're still on your horse by the end of this journey. Let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's listening quietly surviving around the world. Now, dim the lights, turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's begin. That's enough warning. You've clicked. So now let's see what it actually felt like to wake up in the Mongol Empire. You don't wake up so much as unthaw. Your eyelids feel sealed shut, not from sleep, but from frost. Your breath. What little escape shangs in the air like a threat, curling into white mist before dissolving into the steppe wind. Somewhere nearby, something exhales. Loud, wet, and far too close to your face. You blink your eyes open. There is fur, coarse, damp. Hot breath hits your cheek like someone left the oven door open in January. Your bedmate is a Mongol horse, not a prize-winning stallion with braided mane and brushed flank. No, this one smells like old cheese, damp wool, and a saddle left out in the rain. His nostrils flare, inspecting your ear like it might be edible. You turn your head slightly and realise your face is buried in the curve of his ribcage. The horse grunts. You grunt back. Mutual disappointment. You are not in a bed. There is no mattress. No pillow. Just a cracked leather roll, stuffed with felt, some half-frozen wool, and your dignity, if you remember to pack it. The wind slices sideways, not downward like rain, not upward like hope, sideways, like it's trying to catch you off guard. Your bones remember something your mind hasn't caught up to, yet you're not in Kansas, you're not in Canada, you're somewhere near the Onon River, in the 13th century, and history isn't just happening around you, it's sleeping beside you, drooling into your blanket. You try to move, you shouldn't have. Your right arm is under you, pins and needles numb. Your left leg is cramping, twisted into a frozen angle of regret, and your horse, bless him, has thoughtfully placed one hoof on the tail of your cloak. You tug once. No response. Twice. He shifts slightly, but not in your favour. You mutter something in the universal language of bad mornings. He snorts again. Maybe that means good luck. Around you, the camp is already fading into motion. No one announces anything. There are no bugles and no shouting, it's just the quiet rustle of wool tents being tied down, boughs being slung across backs, and dozens of hooves beginning to move. The Mongols do not wait for anyone. If you are awake, you ride. If you're not awake, you will be left, or eaten, possibly both. You finally wrestle yourself into a standing position. Your knees crack. Your back makes a sound you haven't heard since that one time you tried yoga with your daughter. Your breath fogs up again, this time in front of your own eyes. The sun hasn't risen, and neither has your sense of purpose. But the horse is moving, so you follow him. That's the relationship now. Your saddle is a work of leather, bone, and philosophical misunderstanding, you mount clumsily, one boot in the stirrup, the other flailing behind you like a fish remembering how to swim. You manage to stay upright. Barely. There's no time to congratulate yourself. A boy rides past you, maybe 10 years old. His bow is longer than his legs. He's chewing on something, probably meat. Possibly rope, and he doesn't even glance your way. His saddle is older than he is. He's been riding since before you woke up. He'll be riding long after you fall off. You nudge your horse forward. He doesn't respond. You nudge again. Nothing. Third time, you click your tongue the way you heard someone do yesterday. That works. Sort of. You lurch into motion with the grace of a man thrown out of a moving bar stool. There is no breakfast. Not in the sense you're used to. No eggs. No coffee. No idle banter about the stock market or last night's ball game. You chew on dried meat while bouncing across uneven ground. It's grey, leathery, and tastes like regret dipped in old smoke. By now, your face is starting to go numb. Your hands too. You adjust your gloves. That helps for 7 seconds. Then the wind finds the hole in your sleeve again. It always does. Mongol wind is like that. It has a personality. Spiteful. Thorough. The landscape rolls ahead of you. Endless. Brown. Frozen. And utterly indifferent to your existence. No roads. No signs. Just tracks from other horses that you follow because stopping is not an option. You urinate from horseback, not because you want to, because getting off would take too long. You figure it out on the second try. Your feet are already sore. Your thighs scream with every bounce of the saddle. But no one else seems to notice. The warriors around you ride like ghosts, silent, upright, unsentimental. Occasionally, one switches horses mid-trot, just like that. Slide down one, leap onto another. Their mounts are not pets. They are transportation, heating systems, and if necessary food, you look down at yours. He snorts again, the same way a diner sighs at a disappointing menu. By mid-morning, your lips are cracked, your eyelids sting. You've eaten something questionable. You've lost sensation in half your toes. And you've switched horse hunts by choice. Once, because your original mount decided to lie down and nap mid-ride. No one helps you, but no one mocks you either. This isn't camaraderie. It's not cruelty either. It's something else. A kind of shared loneliness built on movement. You ride, therefore you are. You stay upright, therefore you matter. You fall, and the wolves might get to you before anyone even turns around. No one checks if you're okay. That's not rudeness. That's reality. Your survival is assumed. Your pain is internalized. Your place in the world is defined by one simple metric. You're moving. And here, in the Mongol Empire, that's all that counts. You're not a prisoner. Not yet. You're not a guest. You're a body on a horse, and as long as you keep pace, no one cares where you came from, what your name is, or whether you're scared. But fall behind. Fall behind, and the wind will remember you longer than the warriors do. So you ride, because there's no choice. And because the horse beneath you, the one who snorted in your face this morning, may be the only thing standing between you and the end of this story. He smells. He stumbles. He doesn't love you. But he moves. And for now, that makes 2 of you. You're not hungry. You're cold. Your jaw aches. Your stomach feels like a locked box someone forgot to fill. But breakfast is happening anyway. Someone hands you a leather sack. It sloshes when it moves. You assume it's water. You assume wrong. You uncap the top and take a whiff. Instant regret. It smells like sour socks and old pennies, with a hint of something unwashed but determined. There's a fizz to it. Not the kind that excites you, more like the ghost of carbonation haunted by bad decisions. This is aerug, fermented mare's milk, room temperature. If the room were a tent that smells like wool, leather, and last night's stew. Everyone around you drinks it like it's nothing. Grandmothers, children, warriors with blood stains still drying on their sleeves. You're not sure what it says about Thema you, but you take a sip. It bites back. Sour doesn't quite cover it. It's acidic, tangy, slightly alcoholic in the way gasoline might be technically flammable. Your throat tries to rebel. You swallow anyway. That's breakfast drink number 1. There is no breakfast drink number 2. You hand back the sack. No one says thank you. That's not part of the culture. Neither is taste. Now, food, if you can call it that. A hardened strip of dried meat is shoved into your hand. It's grey. Not grey like pork that sat out too long grey like something that was once alive and then got bored of the concept. This is mutton, technically. Goat or sheep or something with hooves. You chew again, nothing happens, it doesn't break down, it doesn't soften, it just gets wetter. You wonder if your saliva is disappearing into it like water into desert sand. The man next to you finishes his piece in 3 bites. You're still on bite 1. He doesn't look at you. He doesn't care. He's already tying knots in his saddle rope, eyes fixed on nothing in particular, like his soul is already 20 miles ahead of his body. You keep chewing. The cartilage texture makes you question your dental insurance. Which, of course, you don't have. It's $12.40. If your tooth falls out, you pull it the rest of the way with a knife and keep riding. Someone hands you a small lump of something white and solid. You think it's chalk. You hope it's not. You bite it. Wrong again. It's curd. Arl. Sun-dried dairy. It crumbles like concrete and tastes like someone stored sour cream in a leather pouch under a saddle for a decade, then forgot about it. You look around for a bowl, a spoon, anything that resembles what a Canadian would recognise as eating equipment. There is none. Your hands are your fork. Your sleeve is your napkin. Your dignity. It left camp an hour ago. You want to ask what you're eating. You don't. You've already learned that curiosity isn't rewarded here. It's punished with silence or suspicion. Ask what kind of meat you're chewing and you might not get meat tomorrow. Or worse, you might get an answer. Across from you sits an old man. His beard is frozen in places. His eyes are narrowed not in suspicion, but because that's just how eyes settle when they've seen too many winters and not enough kindness. He watches you chew, not in judgment, in boredom. He sharpens his blade as he eats. Not a small knife, a long one, curved, nicked from decades of utility. He does it without looking, as if his fingers remember blood from muscle better than his mind remembers stories. The only sound is the quiet rip of meat from teeth. No one's talking, no one's laughing. You think of home. Breakfast was different. Toast, jam, maybe scrambled eggs. Bacon if you were lucky. Even during rough times, divorces, layoffs. That year the business almost folded, you had breakfast. Here, breakfast doesn't comfort. It doesn't greet the day. It just reminds you that the only reason you get to keep moving is because your body has calories. Calories that come in the form of leather-tough meat, dairy that could be used as a blunt weapon, and milk that feels like drinking vinegar through a sock. You take another bite. The mutton still doesn't break down. You give up and swallow it whole, like a prideful pill. The fire nearby sputters. Someone's boiling something. You hope it's soup. You suspect it's hooves. A younger man leans down and tears meat with his teeth directly off a bone. No plate, no hesitation. He finishes and tosses the bone behind him like it's a statement. It lands with a dull thud. The dogs nearby lurch for it. You're still not done. You chew slower now, not from caution, but fatigue. Your jaw is giving up. The air sits heavy in your gut, fermenting its way into new regrets. But you keep eating, because no one waits. Because if you fall behind now, before the first ride of the day even begins, you might as well stay behind forever. You finish what's in your hand. You don't ask for more. You don't say you're still hungry. That would be weak. And here, weakness is a smell everyone can detect. The old man nods at you once, barely perceptible. Approval. Pity. Maybe just a twitch. It doesn't matter. You've passed the first test of the day, not dying during breakfast. You lick your fingers because there's no water. You wipe your hands on your cloak because it's already stained with everything imaginable. You roll your shoulders, feeling your joints creak, and then you stand. No one claps. There is no ceremony. You're not full. You're not satisfied. But you're slightly less starving than you were 15 minutes ago. And in the Mongol Empire, that's what we call a win. You've heard the myths, that the Mongols were filthy, barbarians, uncivilized, never bathed, smelled like death's laundry basket. That part's not entirely wrong, but it's also not what you think. See, they didn't avoid hygiene because they were lazy. They avoided it because bathing could kill you. Let's say you find a river. It's moving, clear, tempting. You strip down, wade in, scrub off 3 days of horse sweat and bone dust. It feels good, cleansing, almost sacred. Congratulations. You've just contaminated the tribe's drinking water. That water wasn't yours. It was survival. You just bathed in the lifeline of 10 people who now might die of dysentery so you could feel fresh. So no, they didn't bathe, not because they were primitive, because they were practical. Instead, you wipe your face with your sleeve, you rub your hands with ash. If you're feeling fancy, you smear on a layer of animal fat to keep the wind from skinning you alive. It works. Sort of. You still smell. Like leather. Like horse. Like fire and sweat and the inside of a saddle that's been on campaign since last spring. But everyone else smells the same. It's not offensive. It's normal. Expected. Even comforting. You never realise how freeing that is until you've lived it. There's no pretense here. No deodorant. No soap. No illusions. You're not a clean man, and no one cares. Your hair hasn't seen water in weeks. But it's tied neatly under your cap. Not for beauty. For function. For order. Appearances matter, but not the kind you're used to. Back home, someone might comment on your cologne. Here, the only compliment is, you look like you haven't died yet. There are no mirrors. Only reflection is from someone else's eyes. If they squint less, you're doing okay. Lice. Of course. You find one behind your ear on day 4. It's not a surprise. It's not even a problem. You flick it into the fire. It sizzles. God, that's the ritual. Some warriors name them. Others collect them for sport. It's not a flaw. It's company. Too many bites smear more fat on your skin and let the parasites choke. It's not pretty, but it's effective. Mostly, you itch. You always itch. There's no cure, only distraction. Keep riding. Keep moving. Scratch where you can. Ignore what you can't. Your nails grow thick, cracked, sharp enough to count as weapons. You clean them with the edge of your knife, if you clean them at all. Your hands are no longer hands. They're tools. Calloused, dirty, raw, but useful. That's what matters. Clothes you wear wool, heavy, rough, 3 layers in winter, 1.5 in summer. You don't change it. You don't wash it. You just wear it longer, until it becomes part of your skin. Eventually. It's hard to tell where you end and the fabric begins. The cloak on your back has blood on it. Goat. Mostly. Some yours. You don't scrub it out. You wear it like a badge. Underwear doesn't exist. You wear what you wear, and you wear it until it no longer resembles anything that should be worn. Then you repurpose it into a saddle rag, or a bandage, or leave it under a rock for someone else to mistake as a sign from the gods. And still, you keep going, because no one stops here to clean themselves, only to eat, sleep, fight, breathe. Sometimes, not even that. You remember the first time you complained. It was about your socks, or what passed for them. Damp, rank, shifting around your feet like wet leaves. You made a face, spoke a sentence. The man beside you grunted. Then he took off his own boot and showed you the toe he'd lost to frostbite. He didn't say anything else, and neither did you. You learn fast. Cleanliness here isn't about comfort. It's about survival. You clean the wound that might rot. You wrap the hand that still bleeds. You sharpen the blade, but never polish it. That's the difference. The only time someone got truly cleaned, you remember, was when an elder died. They washed him with ash, wrapped him in furs, placed a stone over his chest. It wasn't ritual, it was prevention. Dead things smell worse than living ones, and no one wants to be downwind of that for days. The dogs finished the rest. No perfume, no oils, no flower petals, just silence and distance. You adapt. Eventually, you stop noticing the smell. Yours, theirs. The camp's. Instead, you start to notice other things. A shift in breath. The way a man rubs his hands before a storm. The kind of soot on a stranger's sleeve that tells you what he burned last night to stay alive. Clean isn't real anymore, but dirty means you're still here. Alive. Scratched. Smoked. And coated in the grime of people who have never once apologised for their existence. You realise it's not about looking clean. It's about not dying. And that, in the Mongol Empire, is what passes for personal care. You're not being judged, not for your smell, not for your stains, not for the clump of hair that hasn't moved since Tuesday. Everyone's too busy surviving, and when everyone's filthy, no one is. Not really. There's no speech, no trumpet, no drumbeat, no flag held high in the wind. You ride in silence, and so does everyone else. Even the horses know. Something changes in the way they move less wandering. More purpose. The men around you check their gear with muscle memory. Not discussion. No one calls out orders. No one asks questions. The only sounds are creaking leather, the hiss of bowstrings being uncoiled, and the occasional cough swallowed by the wind. You tighten your belt, adjust your quiver, your fingers brush the spine of each arrow, 67 in total. You don't know if that's enough. Then again, no one ever knows if it's enough. Your horse picks up pace on its own, as if it understands what's coming, and maybe it does. Mongol horses are more than animals. They're strategy. They're endurance. They're the only thing between you and a very quiet, very permanent end. You rise slightly in the saddle, not fully standing, not seated. It's the posture you've learned over dozens of rides, knees loose, back steady, hands light. One misstep and you'll eat dirt and get trampled, and that's the lucky outcome. The horizon ahead shifts. Dots. Tiny. Dark. Moving dots. You blink once. They're closer. Riders. Like you, but not like you, because they're not here to ride beside you. They're here to test whether you deserve to keep riding at all. Your grip tightens around the bow. It's not large. Mongol bows never are. Short. Curved. Built from horn, sinew, and layers of violent craftsmanship. It looks small. It is not weak. You've seen what it can do. It can split a throat at 200 yards. It can punch through armour that looks impenetrable. And in the right hands, which hopefully are your sit, can decide whether you see nightfall. You pull an arrow from your saddle. It's bone-tipped, slightly curved, black-feathered. You notch it. Elbow high. Your shoulder rotating like you've practiced 1,000 times before, because you have. And then movement. The line breaks. Your side surges. No one yells charge. There's no need. You all move as one. Not from discipline, but from necessity. The enemy moves too. They're not Mongols. You can tell by how they clump together like they think strength is in numbers. It's not. Not here. Not today. Your horse bolts forward. You hold steady. Wind slaps your face like an open palm and your eyes sting. The world tilts, jerks, steadies. You feel more than you see. You aim. You twist your torso. Lean into the gallop. Let the arrow fly. You don't wait to see where it lands. Another arrow. Another draw. Another shot. By the time you blink, 3 have left your string. Your fingers burn from the friction. Your quiver is already lighter. All around you. The air hums with death. The sky is not filled with birds. It's filled with decisions. Yours. Theirs. The one's too slow. Too proud. Too exposed. You pass a man yelling something in a language you don't know. An arrow silences him mid-sentence. You don't look back. This is not a movie. There is no slow motion, no final stare, just targets. Missed or hit. They try to flank. You shift. You pull hard on the reins and wheel around. Not to run, but to bait. This is how Mongols fight, not head-on, not by accident, but by pattern. Chaos arranged in clean geometry. You retreat. They chase. You let them. You count 5 riders on your tail, maybe 6. Hard to tell in the dust. You don't panic. You wait. And then on the 3rd beat you pivot. You twist in the saddle again. Loose 3 arrows in quick succession. 1 misses, 1 hits. 1 finishes what the 2nd started. The rest of the pack pulls back. Too late. You're already repositioning. You've moved 30 yards sideways without stopping. Your horse doesn't need guidance anymore. He knows what you're doing. He's doing it too. You're no longer a person on a horse. You are a weapon. The battle doesn't swell. It doesn't crescendo. It continues. Precise. Brutal. Thoughtless. And yet impossibly efficient. The smell changes. You don't notice it at first. But eventually, your lungs catch it, blood. Sweat. The black powder stink of something burning. Your stomach turns. You ignore it. You twist again. Fire again. You can't stop now. Not until they do. Poison-tipped arrows are already doing their work. 1 enemy limps. 2 go down trying to pull him to safety. That's the real trick, don't just kill wound. Let compassion slow them down. You ride past the body of a man who probably had a name. His missing part of his face. His horse is gone. There's not. You don't stop. You don't count kills. There's no scoreboard. No tally. Just one goal. Stay moving. Your fingers are blistered. Your mouth is dry. Your quiver is almost empty. But your horse still runs. and you're still alive. That means you're winning. Eventually the enemy breaks, not in pieces, not in defeat. They scatter. You don't chase, not all of them. Some of your own keep going, of course. Momentum's a hard thing to kill, but you slow, you circle, you breathe. Your body starts to notice what it ignored: shaking hands, sore joints, the blood on your sleeve that may or may not be yours. You wipe it off anyway. No one celebrates, no one sings. The survivors regroup, exchange glances, nod, if that. The sun is lower now. Shadows are longer. You're hungrier than before, but you'll eat later. If you're lucky, if there's anything left to eat. Because out here, there's no victory parade, no flag, no anthem. Just another ride tomorrow. And the knowledge that today, the only thing faster than your arrows was death. Dinner doesn't begin, it simply arrives. Not with plates, not with prayer, not even with warning. Just a blur of motion, a slash of a knife, and the low, wet sound of something that used to be walking no longer walking. You don't see the kill. You hear it, a quick bleat, a pause, then the unmistakable thump of flesh meeting dirt and the faint metallic scent of blood warming in open air. You sit by the fire because that's what everyone else is doing. There are no seats, no logs, no stumps. Just you and a circle of men sitting cross-legged in the dust, leaning into the heat like it's the only friend they have left. A carcass is dragged into view. Goat, probably. Maybe sheep. You don't ask. You never ask. It's half-skinned already. Steam rising from its muscles, ribs exposed like a broken fan. The skin is pulled off in strips. The head is gone, or maybe never there. A boy can't be older than 12 starts carving. Not gently, not professionally, just fast, focused, efficient. Someone hands you a piece. It's hot, slippery, slightly twitching. You stare at it longer than you should. This is your dinner. It's not cooked yet. You're told to wait, but not long. The fire is already roaring. Someone spears the meat on iron rods blackened with soot and past regrets. It sizzles, then hisses, then weeps fat into the flames. You don't know if that smell is appetizing or horrifying. Your stomach votes for both. No one speaks. They just chew. One man gnaws a rib clean in under a minute. Another dips a hunk of meat into something thick and dark, maybe curd, maybe blood. A third cracks a bone open and sucks out the marrow like it owes him money. You're handed another piece. This one is cooked. Barely. You bite. It's tough. Greasy. There's no salt. No spice. No garnish. Just heat. Blood. And survival. You chew because not chewing means weakness. And out here, weakness attracts attention of the wrong kind. You taste hair. You keep chewing. The fat coats your mouth. It clings to your teeth. Slides down your throat. Settles in your belly like melted wax. But it warms you. That's the secret. Meat is fuel. But fat is insurance. It sticks to your ribs. It keeps the wind out of your bones. It lets you fall asleep without shivering yourself awake every hour. So you eat the fat. You eat it like it insulted your family. Some men fight over it, not loudly, just with glances, subtle movements. The way someone reaches for a shared bowl too slowly, and someone else gets there first. No one offers you a second portion. That's not rudeness. That's realism. There's a rule here. Though no one speaks it out loud, you eat what you kill. If you didn't kill today, you better at least help carve. You reach for another piece. This one's darker. Liver, maybe. Or something that used to pump. You don't care. You don't ask. Because out here, questions go hungry. The dogs get the scraps, not pets workers. They hover just outside the circle, eyes low, tail still. When someone tosses a bone, they leap like shadows, disappear, then return. Quiet, polite, deadly. No one talks. That's the part that gets you. It's not silence like awkward dinner conversation. It's not the quiet of people who have nothing to say. It's the quiet of people who are conserving their words for the next time they have to shout incoming or behind you. You chew, you swallow, you wipe your hands on your cloak. It was already dirty. Now it's just differently dirty. The man to your right lets out a low belch. It sounds like a threat, or a prayer. You follow suit. It's polite. Another man finishes his bone, licks it clean, and throws it over his shoulder into the dark. You hear a soft snap as a dog claims it. The fire crackles. Someone stirs a pot hanging over the flames. Whatever's inside is thick and lumpy. Might be stew, might be regret. They serve it with a ladle carved from horn. You get a bowl, wooden, burnt around the edges. You drink. It's warm. That's the best thing you can say about it. It tastes like boiled marrow, sour milk, and something that once had hooves. There are floating bit-skin tendon. You don't look closely. You drain the bowl anyway. It sits heavy in your gut, but not in a bad way. More like insulation. Your body is tired. You feel it now, more than you did during the ride or the skirmish or the sprint to the fire, when the smell of roasting goat first reached your nostrils. Fatigue seeps in. Not dramatic, just final. Someone sharpens a blade beside you. Someone else is plucking hairs from the meat with fingers stained red. No one tells stories. No one asked about your day. You want to ask someone if this goat had a name. You don't, because out here, even the living don't get names half the time. You chew slower now, not from manners, from exhaustion. You stare at the fire. The flames lick upward, orange and blue, like they're remembering something too. You wonder if this is dinner or an ending. But then someone hands you another chunk of meat, and the question fades. You eat, because that's what there is. And in the Mongol Empire, dinner is never about pleasure. It's about calories, temperature, and how long you can keep your eyes open before frostbite sets in. You look down at your food, still steaming, still bleeding just a little, and you think this is a meal. It's a truce between hunger and death, and tonight death's willing to wait. There's no warning. Winter doesn't drift in slowly with poetic snowflakes and soft grey skies. It doesn't arrive with a gentle crunch of frost beneath your boots. It simply appears. One night, you sleep with your boots off. The next, your boots are frozen solid. Your breath turns to ice. Your fingernails ache. And the world you knew, the one where discomfort was temporary and fire fixed things, is gone. This is the step, and the step does not forgive softness. The first thing to go is your sense of time. You wake before dawn, but it's still dark. You sleep after sunset, and it's darker still. Days stretch like old leather. Nights shrink around your bones. You ride anyway, because there is no shelter, no village, no hearth. Just the endless openness of frozen dirt and wind that bites like it holds a grudge. The wind doesn't howl, it doesn't whistle, it hunts. It waits for gaps in your cloak, for cracks in your resolve. It finds the soft parts, eyelids, ears, the space between glove and wrist, and it settles there, like a parasite. It has teeth, and it does not unclench. You try to light a fire. There's no wood. Must have been for miles. Trees are myths here, legends told by travellers with better maps and worse luck. So you burn what you have. Dung, dried, hardened, sun-baked dung. From horses, goats, anything that used to eat and no longer does. It catches slow, smoulders low, and smells like betrayal. But it burns, and that's enough. The smoke makes your eyes water. You welcome it. The tears don't fall, they freeze on your lashes, fusing them shut. You pick at them with a cracked fingernail. Now your fingers bleed. Good. That means you still feel them. You crouch low, closer to the flames, hoping for warmth. There is none. The fire doesn't warm you. It just reminds you what warmth used to feel like. You open your cloak, let the smoke curl around your chest, your ribs. Maybe it will trick your skin into remembering summer, or it doesn't. Behind you, your horse shifts. He's as cold as you are, but less emotional about it. His flanks steam in the night air. You press your back against him. He doesn't move. Neither do you. You're not cuddling. You're surviving. Out here, horses are insulation. They trap heat like a living furnace. Their bodies radiate life in a way the fire never does. You breathe through your scarf, face turned to his ribs. He exhales once, slowly. It feels like kindness. You're wearing everything you own. Wool on wool, leather on fur. You've wrapped your feet 3 times, and still your toes are numb. You wiggle them. Nothing. You try again. Still nothing. You stop wiggling. Less to lose that way. You think about taking off a boot to check. You don't That's how people lose whole feet trying to prove they're still there. Better to wonder. You bury your hands deeper into your armpits. You sit still. You stop blinking because every blink risks your lashes freezing together again. Someone across the fire coughs. No one responds. There's no conversation, no songs, no stories, just the low crackle of dung burning, the occasional shift of hooves in snow, and the shared silence of men doing math in their heads. How many fingers do I still have? How long before morning? How many days left until something warmer kills me? You pull your scarf higher. Your breath condenses instantly, then freezes. Your moustache stiffens. Your eyebrows are crusted white. You are becoming part sculpture. Sleep comes in fits, short bursts between shivers, micro-dreams filled with heat that vanish the moment your mind remembers where your body is. You wake up colder than when you slept. Your joints ache. Your back feels broken in 6 places. Your bladder wants release, but the idea of pulling anything down makes your soul wince. Eventually, need wins over dignity. You shuffle 3 paces from camp, urinate through 3 layers of confusion, and hurry back. The wind hits you full on when you turn. You stop breathing for 3 seconds. That's all it takes. 3 seconds of unfiltered cold. Your lungs revolt, your spine locks, your ears scream. You return to your spot, still warm from your absence. You curl tighter into your horse. He doesn't flinch. He's used to this. You are not yet. By morning, 2 of your toes are black. Not frostbitten. Not yet. Just different. You make a mental note to keep them close. To not test them. To pretend they're fine until they say otherwise. One man in the caravan lost a foot last year. Another lost half his face. No one talked about it. They just adjusted their expectations and kept riding. Out here, survival doesn't look heroic. It looks like lying motionless for hours. Like holding your urine until your kidneys beg for mercy. Like chewing frozen meat with a broken molar because the warmth from digestion is worth the pain. You see the sun rise. It doesn't help. It's not warmer, just brighter. The kind of light that exposes the cracks in your skin and the thinness of your will. You stand. Your knees crack. Your spine stutters. You slap your thighs to wake up whatever nerves are still taking messages. Your horse shakes himself out and walks forward like he's already bored of today. You follow him. Not because you're ready, but because staying still is worse. Because in the Mongol winter, you don't have to die to be forgotten. You just have to stop moving now, and the cold will do the rest. You've never been this quiet in your life. Not in church, not in court, not during that moment in childhood when your father raised his hand and the world stood still. This silence is different. It's thick, intentional, alive. It wraps around your neck like a hand not to choke, but to remind you it could. You're standing at the edge of a circle of warriors, all older than you, harder. Their faces are stone, their arms crossed. No one shifts. No one clears their throat. In the centre is the Khan. No throne, no gold, no fanfare. He sits on a platform made of wood, cracked and plain. One corner is patched with rope and a hide that might have once been your dinner. He's chewing a piece of meat. Slowly, deliberately. The kind of chewing that makes you forget you're hungry and start wondering if maybe he's just thinking about the last man who interrupted him. His coat is fur-lined but weather-beaten. The stitching is crude. His boots are stain-dried blood. Maybe. From a goat. From a soldier. From someone who asked the wrong question last week. Yes, you can't tell what you don't ask. He doesn't look at you. Not yet. You shift your weight slightly. A mistake. One of the guards glances at you. Just once. No expression. But it's enough to freeze you in place. Behind the Khan, a map is stretched out across a slab of felt. It's not drawn, with inkits carved, stitched, burned, roads like veins, rivers like threads, cities like small red scars. He traces them with a finger. No words, just a finger. Then he speaks. His voice is not loud. It's not commanding. It's barely above the crackle of the fire behind him, but it cuts deeper than any shout ever could. A command. 3 words. Foreign. Final. You don't understand the language. You understand the tone. Something is about to be set on fire. You nod, though no one asked you to. Others nod too. They don't blink. They don't hesitate. That's the rhythm here. He speaks. You nod. He looks. You move. You're not invited to speak. You're not even invited to exist except as a vessel for his orders. He finally looks up, and just like that, the temperature in the tent drops another 10 degrees. His eyes are not angry, not wide, not burning with vision. They are tired, calculating, quietly unimpressed. You're not sure if he sees you or sees through you. You pray it's the second, because if he truly sees you, your fear, your foreignness, your slowness, it's over. He glances at your boots, your posture, your hesitation. Then he looks away. Relief doesn't come, because now you're waiting for what comes next. He gestures toward the map, a simple flick of the wrist. One of his generals steps forward, murmurs something, then points. Another murmur, another nod. That's how decisions are made. Not in debate, not in discussion, in gesture, in consensus that moves faster than understanding. You're not here to contribute. You're here to listen. The Khan issues another order, this time louder, but still, no shouting. The kind of volume you'd use to call your son from across a field, not to conquer a kingdom, but a kingdom will fall, probably before you finish digesting whatever meat you ate last night. The man to your left coughs, not loud, but loud enough. Heads turn, the Khan's does not, but the room has changed. There's a shift. The air becomes sharper. The man who coughed lowers his head. Too late. The Khan lifts his finger, points to a guard, then keeps talking. No one looks back when the man is escorted out. You don't hear anything, and that's what scares you most. You stop breathing through your mouth. You start counting your own breaths to make sure they're silent. The meeting continues. Names are mentioned. Cities you've never heard of. One is circled in charcoal, another is slashed out entirely. You assume it no longer exists. You're handed a scroll, a list of orders, written in a script that looks like it was carved by bone and vengeance. You nod, tuck it into your sleeve. Don't ask for clarification. You'll figure it out, or you won't. Either way, you'll ride. The Khan looks at the fire now, not because he's cold, because he's finished. That's the signal. The War Council dissolves. No applause, no summary, no dramatic exit, just silence and movement. You turn to leave, but not before glancing back once, just once at the man who just mapped your week with 2 fingers and fewer words than it takes to order lunch. He's not watching you. He never was. He's already thinking about the next city, the next name to erase, the next rider to replace you if you fall, and you understand something deep in your marrow. This isn't leadership by charisma, it's leadership by gravity. He doesn't pull you in, he anchors you. He bends the air in the room until all choices fall toward him. You don't follow him with your eyes. You follow him with your heartbeat and pray it never skips. You never make the mistake twice. That's the rule. The first time, you bleed. The second time, you're not around long enough to regret it. There is no courtroom, no robe, no bench, no long-winded speeches about moral character or youthful lapses in judgment. There's just you, a stolen horse, and a flat rock, and a man with a moustache so sharp it could be registered as a weapon. He points at the horse, then at you, then at the rock. He doesn't raise his voice. He doesn't need to. The crowd around you is quiet, not shocked, not angry, just observant, curious, maybe, to see what the punishment will be, not if there will be one. That part was never in question. You try to explain, you didn't steal it, you borrowed it. You meant to bring it back. You weren't thinking, panicked, you were cold, it was unattended. You didn't mean to ride far, but the Mongols don't care about intent, they care about impact, they care about the system. And in the system, a horse isn't property. It's transportation, heat, food, warfare, prestige, and survival all packed into 4 legs and an attitude. You don't steal a horse. You don't even joke about it. You especially don't touch one that doesn't belong to you, because that horse might have saved someone's life last winter, or might carry a child and a bow across 1,000 miles of conquest next month. You stole a future, and that's not forgiven. The council gathers. Elders, warriors, one with a twisted hand, another with a burn across half his face. These are not judges. They are survivors. They do not speak immediately. One spits, another shrugs, then they nod. That's your trial. Verdict guilty, sentence walk, not death, not today. You're lucky. The horse is unharmed, recovered quickly, And your plethopathetic was short enough to be respected. You didn't lie long. You now owe the tribe 1 horse. Since you can't pay, you'll repay with time. Your punishment is public, humiliating, and utterly practical. You walk, no saddle, no reins. You march behind the caravan, through frost and mud, until someone decides your debt is cleared. That could be weeks, or months. No one says. You carry your own gear. You eat last. You sleep farthest from the fire. You do not complain, because if you do, they'll stop looking at you like a lesson, and start looking at you like an error to erase. Another man was caught hoarding rations once. He'd stolen dried cheese and tucked it into his boot. When they found it, they made him eat every crumb on the spot. Then they made him eat the leather pouch it came in. He choked. Twice. They did not help him. He survived. Barely. But he never stole again. Another man lied to his commander about what no one remembers, just that it was during a ride, and he said he'd scouted an area he hadn't. A week later, the unit walked into an ambush. 3 men died. The liar lost his tongue. Not metaphorically. The law here is simple. Steal something. Repay double or give up something of equal value. Can't. Then something gets taken. A finger, a hand, a reputation. Murder, immediate death. Unless it's part of a recognised blood feud, in which case you owe the family livestock, or labour, or a wife, preferably all 3. Assault a fellow Mongol, death. Assault a foreigner under Mongol protection, double death. With ceremony. They'll build a fire for that one. Tell the story around it. Make sure the next 10 riders remember what lines not to cross. But here's the thing no one back home tells you. The system works. It's brutal, but it's clear. Everyone knows where they stand. Not because they studied the law, but because they saw it enforced. You learn by watching fingers disappear. By hearing stories of men buried halfway because only half the crime was provable. By remembering that mercy here doesn't come from empathy, it comes from efficiency. The Khan doesn't care about forgiveness. He cares about function. He doesn't care how sorry you are. He wants to know, will you do it again? If the answer is no, you live. If the answer is maybe, you vanish. Justice isn't blind here. It stares directly at you, judges you faster than you can blink, and delivers its verdict before you remember what side you're supposed to argue from. There are no bribes, no loopholes, no second chances that come with therapy and a pamphlet. You either repay your debt, or you become the debt. And once you understand that something strange happens, you start trusting the system. You trust that your neighbour won't steal your knife, that your captain won't lie to get ahead, that when someone says ill return, they mean it or they'll lose the foot they promised it with. It's not utopia, it's clarity. And in a world where everything else weather war, food is uncertain, clarity is a gift. You walk behind the caravan for 6 days. Your legs blister. Your pride dissolves. You're offered no encouragement, no comfort, but you're not cast out. You're still fed, still watched, still expected to return to the saddle someday. Because here, punishment is not about destruction. It's about reminder. And now, every time you pass a horse, you bow your head slightly, not in reverence, but in memory of what it cost you to forget. Today, you're not a soldier. You carry no sword, no bow. Your horse bears no armour. Your coat is cleaner than usual. Your hands are empty except for a scroll sealed in wax and the faint smell of blood that never quite fades from your cloak. You're not riding into battle. You're riding into conversation. But don't let the softness of the word fool you. This is not diplomacy as the world once knew it. This is Mongol diplomacy. And Mongol diplomacy doesn't beg. It informs. You approach the city with 2 others. One rides ahead with the banner a strip of cloth bearing the Khan's mark, dark and unmistakable. Another holds the letter. You're in the centre. The man who will deliver the words. The gates loom ahead, high, painted, decorated with gold. The guards on the wall carry spears and wear arrogance. You stop 50 yards from the entrance. You wait. No yelling, no banging. You are not a petitioner. You are an announcement. Eventually the rider comes out to meet you. He's dressed well. Brocade, polished boots, a beard that took maintenance and pride. He looks you over. Notices the dust, the plain saddle, the leather scroll. He doesn't speak first. That's good. He's learning. You hand over the letter. He hesitates. Bad sign. Then he takes it. Good. He reads it. Worse. His eyes narrow. Worse still. He speaks. And if we decline, you don't blink. You don't look away. You say it evenly, quietly. Then we will return. He smiles. The kind of smile men wear when they believe the world will still be here tomorrow. You let him. Because it's not your job to convince. It's your job to deliver. The scroll he just read is simple. 10 words, give or take, depending on the language. The Mongols are flexible that way. It usually goes something like submit and live, refuse and be forgotten. There's no preamble, no history lesson, no offer of negotiation. The Mongol Empire doesn't barter. It expands. Your role is not to charm or plead or reason. Your role is to clarify the situation, to make it known that the Khan is aware of this city, and that it exists on borrowed time. The clock has started ticking. Sometimes they say yes. They send tribute. Horses, silk, daughters. They swear allegiance. They open their gates. They bend, and they are spared. Mostly. Other times they hesitate. They send lavish gifts. Play for time. Smile and stall. That's fine. The Mongols love gifts. They love maps more. Because every time you're let in, every time you ride through their streets, they're handing you intelligence, architecture, wall thickness, water sources, barracks. You remember, you pass it on. And when the city says no, when the scroll is ignored, the flag insulted, or worst of all, the messenger killed, that's when diplomacy ends and retribution begins. Swift, brutal, absolute. You've seen it. You've ridden back after the Numrat bearing nothing but an empty saddle and a calm face. And within days, the army follows. 40,000 riders. Siege engines constructed en route from dismantled villages. Battering rams carved from monastery pews. Engineers smiling over the fresh wood of someone's family home. Now a catapult. There is no second letter, no counteroffer, only dust and flame. You remember one city in particular. They laughed at your message, mocked your cloak, mocked your accent. One man tried to touch the banner, grinning. You warned him. He kept grinning. You left. 2 weeks later, the walls came down under a storm of arrows and firepots. You rode in again, not as a messenger, as a witness. There were no smiles then, just ash and silence. Back in the present, the man in front of you has finished reading. He rolls the scroll slowly, fingers tracing the wax seal like it might still change what written. It won't. He clears his throat. We will consider the Khan's request. You say nothing, not because you don't have an answer, but because you already gave it. He turns back toward the city. You ride away. You don't gallop. You don't glance back. You don't make a show of strength. That's not your role. Your role is already done. Now it's time for theirs. They can surrender, or they can prepare. They can write letters to distant cousins, bury treasure, whisper prayers to stone-faced gods who don't answer to the Mongol Empire. You've seen it all before. The desperate nights of planning, the frantic stacking of barrels along the walls. The children move to cellars. The priests lighting candles like that's going to stop the engineers. But nothing stops the engineers. Not once the scroll has been read and not obeyed. You ride back to camp. The Khan does not ask what they said. He doesn't need to. He looks at your face, and he knows. His generals nod. The map is unrolled again. The city is marked. Not with red, with black. That's the death colour. A practical decision. Really. Black ink is easier to store, and no one comes back from black. The next morning, the army moves. You ride ahead this time not alone, but with a division behind you. No scrolls now, only ropes, axes, fire, and the sound of hooves moving in perfect unisona rhythm older than their walls, louder than their bells, and far more permanent. Because in the Mongol Empire, a message is sent once, and if it is not received, it is replaced. With fire, you expect towers, you expect walls, you expect, at the very least, something carved in stone, something to prove that this empire, this terrifying machine that swallows nations whole, has a beating heart made of something stronger than cloth and smoke. You expect marble, arches, guards in polished helmets. You expect fanfare. What you find is sheep, and felt, and the sound of boiling soup. This is Karakorum, the capital of the Mongol Empire. From a distance, it looks like a nomad camp. Up close, it still looks like a nomad camp. No battlements, no drawbridge, no grand gate proclaiming arrival, just hundreds of yurt circular tents made of wood, wool, and the stubbornness of people who've learned how to live without roots. There is no city wall, there is no street map, just soft paths worn into dirt from 1,000 hoofbeats, stretching between domes that seem to have no fixed order but somehow make perfect sense once you step inside. A woman walks past carrying a ladle the size of your forearm, a child chases a goat, a warrior sharpens his blade with one hand while adjusting a stew pot with the other. It's all so ordinary. It shouldn't be, because this chaos of canvas and smoke is the control centre of the largest contiguous empire the world has ever known. From here, orders have been sent that wiped out entire cities. From here, riders galloped east to Korea, west to Kiev, south into Persia, north into Siberia carrying maps, commands, ultimatums. From this cluster of tents, kingdoms have fallen, and yet there's not a palace in sight. The Khan's yurt is larger than the others, yes, but not imposing, not royal. The doorway faces south, always. The felt is thicker, the frame reinforced, but it's still a yurt, a glorified hut, until you step inside. There's no throne, no jewel-encrusted seal of authority, no banners boasting military triumphs, just fur, scrolls, low seating, weapons racked along the walls, the smell of tallow and parchment, the heat of a stove burning something you can't identify. And maps. So many maps. They're everywhere, painted on hide, inked on bark, carved into thin sheets of wood. They cover entire walls. Some are pinned to beams with bone knives. Others lie curled in baskets, labelled only with short, cryptic marks. Likely in 4 languages. You reach out to touch one. A guard blocks your hand without looking. You retract it. They're not here for decoration. They're not even here for reference. They are weapons. Each yurt in this city is like that. You begin to realise the capital isn't a city, it's a machine. Every tent houses a function. One for provisions, one for orders, one for archives, one for captured documents being translated into Mongolian, Persian, Chinese, whichever script is needed for the next conquest. You meet a woman who speaks 5 languages. She's slicing goat meat and reviewing military correspondence at the same time. You meet a one-eyed man who knows every passable mountain trail between Hungary and Bukhara. He doesn't write it down. He doesn't have to. He's the map. There are no statues of Genghis Khan here. No stone faces staring down from above. Because permanence is not the point. Everything here can be packed up and gone within hours. No city to besiege. No citadel to conquer. If danger comes, Karakorum doesn't resist. It vanishes. Then reappears on the next plane over like a ghost. Like a rumour. You understand now this is why the Mongols always win. They don't build monuments. They build momentum. You were expecting a throne room. You found a war engine. You were expecting a capital. You found a control panel. Nothing is wasted. Nothing is for show. You step into a tent expecting a kitchenette where tax records are sorted. You step into a smaller one. It's a weapons repair station. The forge is portable. The council room is lined with saddle cushions. The archive is guarded by a girl who looks 16 and probably killed her first man before her first period. There's no treasury. There is no need. Gold doesn't mean anything here unless it feeds horses, buys arrows, or seals a treaty with a kingdom still standing. They don't hoard riches. They hoard information. They hoard road access, weather patterns, river depths, the size of your army, your internal tensions, your weaknesses disguised as pride. This city, if you can even call it, that doesn't rule by law, it rules by reach. And every fire burning here beneath every pot, inside every stove, licking the sides of every brazier is part of the same flame. The one that consumed Baghdad, the one that blackened the gates of Samarkand, the one that danced on the ruins of cities that said no to the wrong letter, delivered by the wrong messenger on the wrong day. And the most terrifying part, it doesn't look like power. It looks like laundry drying on a line. It looks like soup bubbling over goat bones. It looks like nothing. But from this, nothing. Death is coordinated. From this collection of yurts, empires fall. And if you think the wind might carry secrets, It's because it probably does. You stand in the middle of it all, feeling underwhelmed, then overwhelmed, then oddly afraid. Not the kind of fear you feel on a battlefield. The kind of fear you feel in an office building when you realise the person with the cluttered desk and the quiet voice has been running the whole show while everyone else was shouting into the void. There is no glamour here, only control. And once you understand that, you stop seeing yurts, you start seeing command centres, every fire a signal, every pot a ledger, every silence an order waiting to be issued. You thought you were walking into a shepherd's village, but you just stepped inside the war room of the earth. And the only thing more dangerous than what's here is how fast it could disappear. It was right there, tethered just outside the camp perimeters, no guard in sight, saddle still on, a skin of Arag hanging from the horn. Its ears twitched, tail swayed, like it didn't mind being borrowed. And you weren't going to take it far. Just a ride, a short one, a break from the stink of leather and wet wool, a moment to feel the wind without the smell of cooked hooves in your nostrils. That's what you told yourself. You untied the reins. The horse didn't resist. You mounted. He didn't buck. You turned toward the nearest line of trees, no more than a mile away, and then you made your mistake. You exhaled, as if you'd gotten away with something. You didn't even make it to the first ridge. You heard them before you saw them, hoofbeats light, fast, coming from multiple directions. You thought they might be hunting something. You were right. They were hunting you. 3 riders, no yelling, no drawn swords, just eyes like frost, bows on their backs, and a speed that said they'd been here before. You slowed. They didn't. One of them pulled alongside you. He didn't stop, just reached out and snatched your reins, jerking your horse around so hard you nearly lost your seat. The other 2 boxed you in. No one said a word. They didn't need to. You were led back to camp, on your stolen ride. They didn't blindfold you. They didn't bind your hands. They didn't hit you, because they weren't angry. They were disappointed, and that's worse. When you reached camp, the horse was taken from under you. You were ordered to dismount. You obeyed. You didn't resist. What would be the point a ring of warriors formed around you? Not to punish, to observe. One of the elders approached, short, broad, a face like a dried apple and eyes like coals pressed into wet sand. He pointed at the horse, then at you, then at the ground. He didn't speak, but everyone knew what he meant. A theft had occurred, not just of property, but of trust. You tried to explain. It was a mistake. You were going to bring it back. You didn't go far. It wasn't meant as theft. The elder raised his hand, palm forward. Enough. He turned to the others. They nodded, one by one, then they walked away, leaving you standing there, alone, in the centre, in silence. No blood, no blade, no sentence shouted for the crowd, just a decision delivered in shrugs and footsteps. You would walk, not just today, every day. Until further notice, your riding privileges were revoked, your place on horseback taken. You are now a pedestrian in a nation that considers walking an insult. You became the punchline no one dared say out loud. Your gear was not confiscated. Your rations were not cut. You were not banished. You were simply downgraded to something less than a man. Because in the Mongol Empire, a man who cannot be trusted with a horse is not trusted with anything. You tried to make yourself useful. You offered to clean tack, to carry loads. You fetched water. You sharpened blades. No one stopped you. No one thanked you either. You weren't being punished. Not actively. You were being forgotten. You marched behind the others, through fields of frost and clouds of dust, while the horses trotted ahead, bearing your equals. You watched the same boy who once looked up to you ride past without even a nod. You watched meals get handed down the line first to the warriors, then to the old, then to the children. You ate last, not because there wasn't enough, because you weren't considered hungry in the same way anymore. Your cloak was the same, your knife still sharp, but your weight in the world had changed, and weight, here, is measured in hooves. You passed horses tied to posts and didn't look at them. You learned to feel them behind you listening, snorting, breathing, reminding you what you'd lost. Your legs blistered, your pride bled. No one asked how you were holding up. No one offered to let you ride double. Even the dogs passed you without sniffing. That was the worst part, the indifference. Because if they'd yelled, you could have yelled back. If they'd struck you, you could have bled and looked them in the eye. But they didn't. They erased you, slowly, silently, utterly. One morning, you woke to find your boots frozen stiff. There were no spare saddlebags to hide them in. No one offered oil or fire. You beat them against a rock and shoved your feet in cold. You marched another 20 miles that day. Another week passed. Then 2. Your legs grew stronger. Your breath stopped fogging up every time you stood still. Your eyes adjusted to the height difference, the view from below the saddle. Then, one evening, after you'd helped unload packs, repair a broken wheel, and skin a goat in silence, one of the warriors walked over and he held out a bridle. Just that. No words, no explanation. Just leather and metal and a single glance toward an untied horse, standing still in the fading light. You didn't cry. You nodded, took the bridle, approached the horse, and for a moment, you waited for someone to change their mind. No one did. You mounted again awkwardly, rusty. The saddle felt higher than you remembered. Your thighs ached, your grip unsure, but you rode, slow at first, then steady. You passed 2 men. One nodded. That was it. No applause, no announcement, just motion. You had been allowed back into the stream. You were a rider again, but not the same as before, because you now knew something you hadn't understood when you first touched those reins in secret. A horse here isn't just an animal. It's a symbol, a responsibility, a privilege that lives beneath you and will gladly throw you off if you forget who's really carrying whom. You still ride at the rear. That's fair. It's not punishment. It's position. And every hoofbeat beneath you now says the same thing: you are moving forward, but never forget you walk to earn this again. There are no jails, no cells, no iron bars, no echoing hallways of clanging keys and legal appeals. In the Mongol Empire, justice doesn't wait. It doesn't build institutions. It builds fear, and it works. You don't serve time here. Time isn't something the Mongols are interested in serving. They serve movement, usefulness, survival, not bureaucracy. If you break a rule, the consequences break back, immediately, precisely, memorably. The laws are not written in books. They are written in stories, in bones, in the way people flinch when certain topics are mentioned. You ask someone what the law is, and they shrug. Then they tell you a story. You listen, and that's how you learn what's forbidden. Murder, death. Swift. Public. Uneventful. No crowd. No priest. Just the executioner who might be your neighbour and the cold metal he sharpens out of habit. Not hatred. But there's a caveat. If the murder was part of a blood feud, and the victim's family agrees, you don't die. You pay, not in coin, in cattle, in labour, in women, preferably all 3. One man killed another during a drunken argument. The family demanded his sister, 6 oxen, and a year of servitude. He gave it. No one objected. Justice was served, not by the state, but by the balance of pain. He's still alive. He walks with his eyes low and speaks only when spoken to. Everyone remembers what he did, and what it cost. The system worked. Assaulting a Mongol. You might live, if it was a misunderstanding, if you apologise properly, if the injured party agrees. If not, you bleed until the scale feels even. But harm a foreigner under Mongol protection. That's different. That's sacred. Because when a messenger rides under Mongol colours, or a merchant travels with Mongol-issued papers, they're not just people, they're symbols. They represent order, authority. The extension of the Khans will hurt them, and you have insulted the empire. Punishment, death. Ceremonial. Not to honour the victim, but to remind the others. You once watched a man executed for slapping a Chinese merchant during an argument about pricing. The Mongols built a small stage for it. They called the community to watch. The man was offered a blindfold. He declined. They beheaded him in 3 strokes. The first wasn't deep enough. He didn't scream. He didn't get the chance. No one discussed the price of salt for a long time after that. Theft returned double. If you steal a goat, you owe 2. Can't pay. They'll take your cloak, your horse, your weapons, whatever makes you equal again. If you steal from the tribe, from the caravan, from a friend, it's worse. Not in length of punishment, in depth. They won't hurt you. They'll strip your name. You won't be trusted. You won't be greeted. You won't be asked to help build fires or carry loads. You become a ghost who walks alongside the living. A cautionary tale with legs. A man once stole bread during a famine. Not much. A handful of crust from someone else's sack. He wasn't beaten. He wasn't executed. He was placed on night watch every night, alone, for 60 days. No sleep, no warmth, just a torch and the wind and the wolves howling from the edge of camp. He went mad on the 42nd night. He wandered off into the dark. They didn't send a search party. That was the sentence, and he completed it. False testimony. Death. Because words here aren't for decoration. They're for direction. Lies don't just cause confusion. They cause death. Wrong coordinates, misrepresented routes, false warnings, they all lead to loss. So lying isn't just a personal flaw, it's sabotage. You saw a scout lie once. He claimed a river was passable when it wasn't. An entire unit was delayed. Missed a rendezvous. Lost an opportunity to flank. 3 days later, he was hung upside down from his saddle. A sign was pinned to his chest, the symbol for silence. He didn't speak again, because no one asked him to. Disrespecting the Khan lets not pretend there's even an option. He doesn't shout. He doesn't punish personally. He doesn't need to. The people around him handle that. Not out of loyalty, but out of logic. The Khan is the system. He is law, not man. A young warrior once laughed during a briefing. Something small. A joke about camp rations. The timing was off. The silence was too loud. The next morning he was reassigned to latrine duty for the next 6 months. Same cloak, same face, but a different weight behind his name. He served faithfully. He no longer laughed. And yet, for all its violence, Mongol law has one thing few other systems offer: clarity. You always know where you stand. You don't need a lawyer. You don't need a book. You don't need years of appeals or a courtroom with polished floors and echoes of Latin phrases. You just need memory and fear. Not fear of injustice, but of the terrifying efficiency of perfect justice. The kind that doesn't ask who you are, only what you did. The kind that doesn't factor in childhood trauma or economic inequality. The kind that doesn't care about your story, because stories are for after dinner. Justice is for now. You might think that's harsh, until you've watched a camp go an entire year without a single theft. Until you've seen merchants from 5 continents sleep side by side without locks on their carts. Until you've watched a caravan carry gold and silk across 4,000 miles without losing a single thread. You realise then order here doesn't come from kindness. It comes from consequence. And in the Mongol Empire, the blade doesn't wait for your excuses. It listens to your heartbeat. Then it acts. Fast, sharp, final. You thought they'd rush the gates. You thought they'd scream and charge and throw themselves at the walls like angry waves crashing against stone. You were wrong. This is not rage. This is math. The Mongols don't conquer cities like warriors. They conquer like engineers. They don't show up with towers or siege engines already built. That would be inefficient, heavy, slow, predictable. They arrive with axes, and within hours, they become carpenters. There's a forest nearby that's a gift, a monastery. Better. Chairs, beams, doors, altars. Everything becomes material. Even pews soaked with incense and prayer get chopped, stacked, nailed into place. Within days, an entire siege arsenal blooms from the earth like a brutal garden. Towers, ladders, ramps, trebuchets made of freshly felled timber and bound with animal sinew and leather stripped from carts. The wheels might still be stained with the names of the families who owned them. No piece of wood is sacred. No corpse goes unconsidered. They'll lash a cow carcass to the top of a battering ram to absorb heat from boiling oil. They'll use the ribs of a dead ox to reinforce scaffolding. They don't waste. They don't decorate. They build like they breathe, and they breathe faster when a city says no. You watch them prepare, not in chaos but in silence. No yelling, no confusion. Just small groups working in tight rhythm, moving like parts of a single mind. The ground is mapped, distances measured, soil tested. One man taps the wall with his knuckle and listens to the sound. He doesn't speak, just walks away and changes the angle of a tower being constructed 300 feet back. This isn't trial and error, this is precision, and it terrifies you. Because while the defenders pray and plan and stack barrels of oil, the Mongols are already 10 steps ahead. They don't build siege weapons to try something. They build them because they already know it will work. They've done this before. Dozens of times. to cities with thicker walls, more men, better engineers, cities that now only exist in memory, or smoke. Day 4, the sky darkens, not with clouds, with arrows. The first volley comes before sunrise, not from the front, from every direction. Hundreds, maybe thousands, of arrows fired in organised waves, some whistling, others silent, some dipped in oil and lit mid-air. They arc high, block the sun, and fall like decisions already made. The defenders scramble, some try to shoot back, others duck, hide. One tower erupts into flame, another buckles as a siege ram slams its basin object that wasn't there yesterday. They are shouting now. Panic. The kind that doesn't make noise in a battle plan but explodes the moment something unexpected touches the wall. The Mongols do not shout back. They whistle. Short bursts. Signals. You see a group of them dismount, not to retreat but to push. A mobile ramp rolls forward. It's covered in oxhide. The wheels were once part of a grain cart. The grain is long gone. The ramp touches the wall. The climbing begins. No battle cry. No banner waving, just boots and steel. You look for emotion. There isn't any. Their faces are calm. Their movements steady. If someone falls, the one behind takes their place. No hesitation. No grief. Another volley of arrows, this time aimed not at defenders but at defenders' supplies. A fire starts near the water barrels. 2 soldiers panic, trying to move them. One slips. He's trampled before he hits the ground. The ladders rise. You didn't even see them being carried in. One is made from what looks like church pews, lashed together with leather and cloth dyed with old wine. The siege towers roll into place. They're taller than the wall now. One creaks as it moves, groaning under the weight of steel and bone and anticipation. Someone inside is singing, not loud, just a low hum, monotonous, like a lullaby meant to outlast you. The gate doesn't burst open, sighs, creaks, bends inward from force applied by something more patient than angry. The defenders try to plug the hole. Too late. Mongol riders pour in it in a stampede, but in a controlled current. They split into 2 groups before the first sword is drawn, one to the right, one to the granary. The granary matters more. They don't fight for glory. They fight for logistics. The warriors aren't here to brawl. They're here to collapse the math of the city. Food first, fire second, morale third, the rest is already decided. You watch a wall collapse, not from cannon fire, but from undermining. They dug under it, days ago, used mud and bones to shore it up, then set fire to it from beneath. It falls sideways, slow and awkward, like a man surrendering. You understand now this wasn't a battle. It was a formula. That night, the city is quiet. Some buildings still burn, others smoulder. No looting, no celebration, no drunken laughter. Just silence, broken by the occasional crunch of rubble beneath a hoof. They inventory what remains, not for trophies, for replenishment. The siege towers are already being dismantled. The wood will be repurposed into carts, cradles, coffin lids. The city stones will not be memorialised. They will be ground into gravel and laid into roads. No songs will be sung of today, only figures. How many arrows used? How many rations consumed? How many men lost, and how long it will take to replace them? Because this wasn't chaos. This wasn't conquest. This was a spreadsheet, and you weren't outmatched. You were outcalculated. You expect celebration. You expect the triumphant chaos of victorymen cheering, women crying, weapons raised to the sky, plundered wine poured over flames. You've seen the movies, you've read the books, but that's not what happens. Here, when the city falls, there is no noise, no singing, no crowing, no wild cries of conquest, just the sound of a tally being taken. The gates are down, the smoke still rising from broken towers. Blood stains the stone in patterns that will take weeks to scrub, assuming anyone bothers. But the Mongols aren't looking at the blood. They're looking at the inventory. Every alley becomes an aisle. Every building becomes a bin. This is not looting. This is accounting. You watch a team of 5 ride into the market district. They split with the precision of a trained search party. One counts bolts of cloth. Another lifts a crate of grain and makes a note in charcoal on a slat of wood. The third opens a drawer, inspects coins, nods, and moves on. No one pockets anything. No one even smiles. There are no trophies here, only resources. Steel is weighed, gold is assessed. Jewellery is dumped into piles, not to be worn, but to be melted. You follow a soldier into a tailor's home. The door hangs loose, inside silence, soot, and a loom still warm. He doesn't take the garments, and he takes the thread, and the tools. The garments he leaves behind, too fragile, not worth the weight. Efficiency over ego, always. You expected rage, looting as catharsis, as revenge. But the Mongols do not loot to avenge, they loot to continue. A dead city means nothing to them unless it helps them move forward. The survivors are gathered in the city square. Men, women, children, a few elders. They're not prisoners. Not yet. They're assets waiting for classification. A man in a fur-lined vest walks down the line. He doesn't ask names, doesn't ask how anyone feels. He asks what they do. A woman says she's a weaver. He nods. She stays. A boy says he's trained in medicine. He stays. A baker, a blacksmith, a translator, all stay. A man says he was a merchant. Too vague. He's removed. You never see him again. Another claims to be a noble. No one asks what kind. They ask how many horses he owns. He hesitates. They don't. He disappears. The system is brutal, but not cruel. It's functional. If you're useful, you live. If not, you vanish quietly, quickly, without ceremony. Because mouths consume, but skills sustain. You realise this isn't judgment. It's curation. Children are gathered and grouped. Those over 10 are expected to carry loads. Those under 10 are evaluated for temperament. The quiet ones are more likely to survive. Loud ones draw too much attention, and attention costs arrows. The elderly. Some are kept for knowledge, for specific languages, for stories that still carry weight. The rest, they are not beaten. They are not scorned. They are simply excluded. They sit in doorways. They are given food, water, a chance to speak. But no one writes their names down. No one learns their faces. They'll be gone by the next sunrise, carried off by cold, infection, grief. They won't be killed. They just won't be remembered. And in the Mongol Empire, that's worse. You walk past what used to be a library. The shelves are gone. The books burned, no. Repurposed. Scrolls used to wrap food. Parchment used to patch boots. Even ink scraped for dye. Not a single word wasted. Not a single word respected, either. The Mongols aren't here to preserve what you wrote. They're here to read it, extract what's useful, and move on. You pick up a torn page. It once held poetry. Now it holds dried goat meat. You understand. Later that evening, a fire is lit. Not a funeral pyre, a forge. The blacksmiths work late, melting broken swords, remoulding shattered tools. Some of the enemy's armour is hammered down into horseshoes. Others are ground into nails. You watch someone take apart a statue of the city's founder, piece by piece. It becomes reinforcement for a wheel axle. The face goes last. It isn't symbolic. It's just heavy. At the edge of the city, a count is underway on barrels, carts, grain, livestock. Men mark numbers with their fingers. Others repeat totals aloud. One young girl writes them in ash on a flat rock. A commander watches. He doesn't speak. But when a count is off, he lifts a hand. No punishment. Just a pause. The count begins again. Accurate this time. You sit on the edge of a stone well, watching all this. No celebration. No banners. Just systems. You realise they didn't conquer this city to dominate it. They conquered it to use it. Not to make it Mongol, but to make it functional. To take what moves, keep it moving. To take what feeds, feed with it. To take what resists, remove it. There's no occupation here, just absorption. You pass the town square again. It's empty now. Cleaned. Not in honour. In preparation. Tomorrow, the camp will be here. Tents will go up. Markets will be redrawn. New tax collectors will be appointed. And none of it will reference what this place used to be. Because to the Mongols, a city is not sacred. It's a warehouse. And if you can't carry it, you can count it. And so you do. You count, like everyone else. Because counting means continuity. Because looting, here, is not a frenzy. It's a spreadsheet. Every nail has purpose. Every plank has destination. Every survivor has a role or a silence. You don't conquer to rule. You conquer to repurpose, to reroute, to feed the next campaign. You ride not from glory, but from necessity. And the Empire rolls are not like a horde of wild men, but like a supply chain with excellent horsemen. 3 days after the battle, the fish market reopens, not somewhere else. Right there. Right where the square was covered in blood 2 nights ago. The same stalls, the same cracked barrels, the same old man yelling about trout like no one ever died beside his cart. You blink at it. It feels wrong. But no one else seems to think so. Women haggle. Children chase geese. A dog runs off with a piece of dried eel and nobody cares. There's a man selling clay pots with one hand and checking tax tags with the other. The city's been conquered, but now it's been reactivated. That's the thing no one tells you about the Mongols. They don't destroy what they don't have to. They burn the disobedient. They erase the stubborn. They obliterate resistance. But once you surrender, once the walls fall and the survivors are counted, they rebuild you faster than you can comprehend. Not out of kindness, out of efficiency. You already have streets. You already have food. You already have a grain system, a currency system, a pattern of the local habits they don't need to reinvent. Why start from scratch when you already work just under new management? A week ago, this place screamed. Now, it hums. The smell of blood has faded into the smell of roasted barley and horse dung. The shops are open. The streets swept. The well repaired. There's no mourning. There's no national anthem. There's a merchant selling combs beside a blackened wall that still has arrowheads stuck in it. He shrugs when you ask. Life continues, he says, handing you a toothpick carved from old wood. So should business. The Mongols don't erase your culture. They just tax it. They don't rename your streets. They just redraw them on their maps. They don't tell you to stop worshipping your gods. They just remind you who sent the messenger last time lightning didn't strike. You can keep your temples, your songs, your local soup. You just can't keep your rebellion. That was the deal, and most people take it, not because they admire the Mongols, but because they're tired of being dead. A new official is installed, as local. That surprises you. You expected a Mongol with a whip and a translator. Instead, it's a man from the merchant class greying at the temples, known to both the rich and the poor. He speaks the dialect. He knows whose house needs repairs and whose nephew got caught looting on day 2. He's smart, and he's terrified, which makes him perfect. He collects taxes with quiet precision. He keeps 2 ledgers on for goods, 1 for rumours. He reports both. The Mongols don't care if someone misses a day's market fee. But if someone starts organising, if someone starts preaching or plotting or printing new slogans, that second ledger lights up, and someone visits, and the market stays open. You see a girl selling bread from a basket. She's maybe 10. Her hair is braided. Her face is smudged. 2 weeks ago, she watched her uncle die with a sword in his chest. Today, she's negotiating price with a man who still wears part of a stolen cuirass. She wins the deal. That's the kind of peace this is. Not the romantic kind. Not the noble, healed, poetic kind. But the kind that works. That lets people breathe again even if it's under someone else's rule. A bard appears in the square on day 10. He sings in the old language. No one stops him. The song is about rain, not glory, not kings, not vengeance. Rain. That's allowed. It's not resistance. Just memory. The people clap when he finishes. A Mongol commander rides by, hears the last note, and doesn't react. He knows the difference between culture and insurrection. It's a line you learn to walk when your empire stretches from Korea to Kiev. The tax station is made from an old bakery. There's still soot in the corners. The scales sit where the bread once cooled. Merchants arrive early, some by cart, some on foot. They wait in line, not because they respect the law, but because they fear the alternative. You don't have to love the empire, you just have to obey its calendar. A woman pays in copper. She hands it over without speaking. She receives a stamped slip and walks away. No one thanks anyone. This isn't customer service. This is survival. You pass a tavern. Inside, men drink quietly. No toasts, no war stories, no songs about the old guard, but they drink. Because the beer still flows, and no one cares who brewed it as long as it's warm. A man at the bar turns to you and mutters, "They didn't kill our voices, just the part that yelled." You nod. He sips. then adds, "And honestly, that part was getting us all killed anyway. You see an old woman carrying herbs. She offers you some. You ask what for. Smoke, she says. For the gods. You ask if the gods still listen, even under Mongol rule. She looks at you like you're the foolish one. They never did. She replies, but now I can afford more herbs. You begin to understand. This isn't rebuilding, it's reformatting. The city hasn't returned to what it was. It's been slotted into a larger machine. Its role is clear produce, pay, stay quiet, and in exchange you're left alone. No sermons, no burning libraries, no forced conversions. Just a new flag over the gate and fewer corpses in the street than the alternative. You don't have to love the system. You just have to fit inside it, like a gear that no longer squeaks. Later that night, you pass the fish market again. It's quieter now. The smell's familiar. Salt, mud, ash. Someone's counting coins in the dark. Someone else sings softly in a language the Mongols never bothered to translate. And in the corner, a teenager sharpens a knife. Not because he plans to fight, but because tomorrow is market day again, and the Mongol Empire waits for no one, not even the conquered. So, you've been promoted. You're now the official Mongol-appointed governor of this dusty, recently conquered city that still smells like ash and wet horse. Congratulations. No one claps. There's no ceremony. No embroidered robe. No sword handed to you with dramatic music. Just a scroll, a list of duties, and a saddlebag full of tax forms written in 3 scripts, none of which you read well. You think power will feel heavier. It doesn't. It feels like paperwork. Your day begins before sunrise. Not to strategize, not to ride out like a hero, to count grain. Mostly. You're led to a storehouse with doors that creak like old ribs, inside rows of sacks, some half full, some leaking. A man with a limp hands you a stick and a tally sheet. You ask him how many sacks were here yesterday. He shrugs. You ask who was in charge of guarding it. He points at a child sweeping mouse droppings with a chicken feather. You write uncertain. Already. Your authority is dissolving into dust. Next livestock records. There were 42 goats. Now, 37. You ask where the other 5 went. Predators. Someone mutters. You ask what kind. They glance toward the soldiers. You don't push. You mark predators on the form and wonder if that counts as acceptable loss. You'll ask someone later if you remember. By midday, your boots are soaked in fish brine, and your left hand is stained with ink that won't come off. You've signed 13 receipts, approved 2 road repairs, denied 3 tax exemption requests, and stared at a broken scale that everyone swears was accurate yesterday. Your meal dried flatbread, 3 olives, and water so bitter it might also be vinegar. There's no feast. You're in charge, but no one feeds the ledger. After lunch, a merchant accuses a baker of underpaying flour taxes. The baker accuses the merchant of over-reporting inventory. You sit between them in a room that smells like anxiety and old garlic. They argue in circles. You nod, then fine them both. Not because you know who's lying, because that's the only way to make them shut up. They both grumble, but they pay. That's your win. You check the paper pile again. Still growing. A message arrives from a northern village wolves attacked a convoy. Another says a drought is killing barley near the river. A third says a local priest is preaching unlicensed metaphors. You don't know what that means. You write back, we'll investigate. You won't. Not today. Someone asked for your ruling on a boundary dispute. You're handed 2 hand-drawn maps and a string. Both men swear theirs is accurate. You ask for witnesses. They point at a sheep. You stare at the sheep. It blinks. You give the land to the man with fewer teeth. He seems grateful. The other one mutters something about your mother. You pretend not to hear. Power. You begin to realise this is a full-time job in disappointing everyone equally. You make one real mistake by late afternoon. A woman brings a tax form with smudged writing. You misread the weight of her grain. You undercharge her. A guard catches it. He says nothing to her. He says nothing to the clerk. He says something to you, just 1 sentence. Next time, we remove a finger. You think he's joking. He isn't. He's holding a knife. Not high, not threatening. Just visible. You correct the form. Apologise. He nods. You keep your hand. For now. You walk the market square at dusk. People nod. Some smile. They're not greeting you. They're checking if you're still alive. You are? You pass a shop where someone's boiling dye in a pot once used to render tallow. You pass a home where a boy is counting coins for his mother. You pass the city wall, patched with wood from the temple roof. Nothing is beautiful, but everything functions, and you're responsible for it, which means, of course, when something breaks, you're to blame. You return to your quarters. It's not a palace. It's a room above the weighing station. You sleep beside sacks of barley and a pigeon that refuses to leave. The walls leak when it rains, which it now does. You light a lamp, pull out your forms, and begin reviewing weights again. You wonder how many times you've written the word sack today. Your eyes blur, your back stiffens. You're not a warrior, you're not a tyrant. You're a ledger that knows how to ride. At midnight, a message arrives. A new caravan is coming through in 4 days. You'll need to prepare their passage, calculate their taxes, and assign escorts. You nod at the messenger, you thank him. He shrugs. You write it down, and you don't sleep. Not because of fear, but because your mind is filled with columns, of beans, of leather, of errors that cost fingers, of praise that never arrives. Being a governor, do you realise what is not about command? It's about calibration. Your power doesn't shine, it weighs. And if you miscalculate, it's not your career that ends. It's your hand, your reputation, your existence. Because the Khan doesn't want kings in his provinces. He wants spreadsheets with a pulse. He wants functioning cities that don't rebel, don't starve, and don't ask too many questions. So you function. You make things add up. And if you do it well enough, you might get to keep your name. You don't remember where the road begins, and if you asked 10 different men riding beside you, you'd get 10 different answers. None of them would be wrong. The road here is not a place. It's a bloodstream. It carries the Empire's oxygen, its gold, its news, its silence. It runs from the frozen hills near the Yellow River to the vineyards beyond the Caspian, through salt deserts, ruined temples, and towns so temporary they're built to disappear before the wind gets bored. You ride it without asking permission, because no one owns the road, but everyone belongs to it. You pass a monk on foot, head shaved, eyes low. He walks without speaking, a wooden rosary ticking off between his fingers like a metronome. His sandals are frayed, but his pace is steady. Behind him, a wagon follows, loaded with texts in 3 languages. Religious probably, political definitely, medical possibly. You nod. He doesn't nod back. He doesn't have to, because he's walking with purpose, and that's all that matters here. A merchant caravan overtakes you at dusk. 16 camels, 3 carts, 2 armed escorts, 1 deaf mule. They carry rugs from Samarkand, dyes from the Indus, dried citrus wrapped in linen from the coast. They also carry gossip. You hear about a minor rebellion in a southern province put down in 3 days. You hear a rumour that a Persian engineer defected to the Mongols and brought plans for a new type of water wheel. You hear that 2 towns further down the road are fighting over access to a single well. All of this before dinner. News here travels faster than memory. You see a rider stopped by the side of the path, horse foaming. He's retying a message tube to his saddle strap. The seal is still intact, wide, wound tight, painted with red ink and a Mongol crest. A Yam courier, part of the imperial postal system. One of thousands. He rides day and night, switching horses at relay stations spaced no more than 40 kilometres apart. At every stop, another mount is fed, watered, saddled, ready. He doesn't speak unless he has to. He doesn't eat unless it's on the move. You know his kind. You envy his clarity. Later that evening, you pass through a checkpoint. 2 guards, a table, a pot of thick broth boiling over camel dung. They glance at your satchel, your clothes, your horse. They ask no questions. They're not here to interrogate. They're here to witness, to register your passage. You nod. They nod. You move on. The checkpoint disappears behind you, swallowed by night. Tomorrow, they'll record how many passed, how many wagons, how many bore seals from the Khan, because the road must breathe, and someone has to check its pulse. A doctor joins your group the next morning. She wears a wool cloak and carries a satchel of bone needles, glass vials, and powders that smell like crushed gods. She's not Mongol, maybe Tibetan, maybe Uyghur. She doesn't say. She treats a man in your group for saddle sores without blinking, then a child for a cough, then a horse for swollen joints. She takes no payment. She stays for 3 miles, then disappears into a side path like fog receding from dawn. No one thanks her. Because healers are part of the road, they rise from it, walk beside it, vanish back into it. You pass a burned village. You don't stop. You don't ask what happened. You already know. Someone broke the rules. Maybe they closed a gate. Maybe they insulted a courier. Maybe they tried to tax a priest with imperial papers. It doesn't matter. The message was sent. The example made. The road is clear again. By midday, you arrive at a roadside way station, half mud, half stone. 2 stories, 4 rooms, inside maps, salt, scribes, a barrel of clean water under lock. A man with 1 eye and 6 rings in his ear records your arrival. You ask if there's a message for you. He checks a basket, hands you a folded slip with your name, written in a dialect you haven't seen in years. You smile, because even the forgotten are remembered if they ride. A storm rolls in. You take shelter under a silk awning rigged between 2 wagons. The driver next to you hums a love song in Arabic. The woman beside him sharpens arrowheads and corrects his pronunciation. The rain hits the dirt like a threat. But the road does not close. It waits. And when the clouds pass, it moves again like nothing happened. Because weather is temporary, but passage that's sacred. You ride past a shrine. Stone. Abandoned. Covered in moss and names that no longer mean anything. Once, men would have bowed here. Lit incense. Sacrificed something small in the hope of something big. Now, the only offerings left are footprints and horse dung. You ride past. You don't stop. Because here, faith isn't placed in idols or stars. It's placed in the rhythm of hooves, the certainty of distance, the fact that this path, this worn, aching stretch of dust and memory will carry you to where you said you'd go. That's enough. That's more than most gods ever delivered. You meet a man who's never left the road. He says he was born on it, somewhere near Balkh, or was it Bukhara, he doesn't remember. He's 60 now. Maybe older, maybe younger. He sells dates and copper trinkets. His face is sunburnt, his lips always moving, even when he's silent. You ask him where he'll go next. He shrugs. Where the road turns. You ask him if he'll ever stop. He looks at you like you've missed the point entirely. Why would I stop, he says, when I've already arrived? You sleep beneath the stars, the road hums beside you. You think about cities, walls, thrones, men who scream for power and die for reputation. And then you think of this road, of the traders, the monks, the spies, the cooks, the couriers, the cartographers, the carriers of medicine and madness alike. You think about how there's this movementis, what keeps the empire alive. Not the palaces, not the armies, the road, always the road. It doesn't promise safety, it doesn't offer comfort, it doesn't ask your name, but it keeps going, and in a world this uncertain, that's the closest thing to truth you've found. You hear her before you see her, the clang of an iron ladle against the edge of a cauldron, sharp, rhythmic, not impatient, just final. It's the sound of a decision being made without your input. You round the corner of the camp's cooking tent and find her hunched over a fire that could burn through steel. Her sleeves are rolled to the elbow, her hands are caked in dough, ash and command. She doesn't look up. She doesn't need to. You've already been accounted for. That's how it is with the women of the steppe. They don't wear crowns. They don't shout. They don't ride at the front of battle. But they control everything, and no one questions that. Not unless they're tired of having kneecaps. You assume at first that she's a cook. She is, but she's also the camp's inventory master. She knows exactly how many goats were slaughtered yesterday, how many turnips are left in the supply cart, and how many warriors need soft rations for dental injuries. She doesn't carry a sword. She carries a bone-handled knife and an expression that could curdle milk. Her tent is the warmest, not because of sentiment, but because every man who wants to eat needs to pass through it. And every man here knows disrespect her, and you eat last, or not at all. You meet another. She's crouched beside a wounded horse. Her fingers are red, her breath steady. She applies poultice without flinching, speaking in a language the animal seems to understand. A young rider hovers nearby, watching like it's his child under the blade. She doesn't acknowledge him. She finishes, slaps the horse's flank, and stands. Then, without changing tone, she tells him he's been saddling incorrectly for months. He opens his mouth, then closes it. She walks away. He bows slightly. You don't laugh. You're too busy adjusting your own saddle. You meet a third at the central tent. She keeps the books, Not in ink, in her head. She recites supply counts, distance travelled, names of the dead, names of the promoted, where every nail came from and where every arrow should go. You ask how she remembers. She blinks, then moves on. You don't ask again. Mongol women don't need your recognition. They don't need your admiration. They need your functionality. And if you fail at that, they will fix you. With words. With tools. With whatever is within arm's reach. One man once made a joke about a woman's hands being too soft to hold a blade. She didn't answer. She simply handed him the wrong herbs for his wound. He passed out for 2 days. When he woke, he couldn't remember the punchline. No one missed it. These women don't walk behind the warriors. They walk beside them, sometimes ahead, sometimes alone. They handle the meat, the wounds, the births, the taxes. They patch holes in tents and in people. They tell children when to grow up and husbands when to shut up. They know when someone's lying before he speaks. They know which man can be trusted with a horse and which can't be trusted with a cooking spoon. And if they ever need to act like they don't know, they don't. They never need to. You once saw a woman in her 60s bark orders at 2 teenage boys who'd knocked over a pot of curdled milk. They laughed, until she hit one of them with a stirring ladle so hard he bit through his lip. She didn't even raise her voice. There is no word for housewife here. There is no word for just a woman. Every woman is an institution, a forge, a ledger, a pharmacy. One is a healer who also arbitrates disputes between families. One is a cook who also tracks star movement and whispers advice into the ears of commanders who pretend not to need it. Another is both midwife and executioner, depending on what time of day you catch her. None of them ask permission. None of them wait to be introduced. You either get in lane or get out of the way. A boy once asked his mother if he could skip chores because he wanted to be a warrior. She made him clean every saddle in camp. When he finished, she handed him a bow and said, "Now you know what it feels like to serve someone stronger than you." He didn't ask again. Sometimes the men ride off to war. Sometimes they don't come back. When that happens, no monument is built. No songs are sung. The woman steps out of her tent the next morning and starts issuing orders. Nothing pauses. Nothing breaks. She simply takes on the weight, because she already was. You ask an old man who really runs the camp. He chuckles without humour. The men burn it down, he says. The women rebuild it. You ask what would happen if all the men vanished. He shrugs. Dinner might be late, but the tent will still stand. They don't look like queens. They look like mothers, aunties, wives. The kind of women who tuck your scarf tighter when the wind picks up, then slap you across the face if you forgot to sharpen your blade. Their kindness is conditional. Their memory is long. Their anger is administrative. You make the mistake of entering a food tent without washing your hands. She sees you. She doesn't scold you. She just points to the bucket, to your hands, then to your face. You wash, you dry, you thank her. She says nothing, but you eat well that night. If the Mongol Empire is a war machine, then its fuel isn't just grain and blood, it's discipline. And the women of the steppe are its refinery. They don't march, they don't conquer, they don't boast, but they keep the machine running, and when it breaks they fix it, with thread, with fire, with force, if necessary. Because sometimes, the hand that rocks the cradle is also the hand that buries the body. It doesn't happen with a scream. It doesn't even happen with a word. One moment, the man is riding beside you. The next, he's slumped in the saddle, eyes open, mouth ajar, spine bent like something gave up inside him quietly. His horse keeps moving. So does the column. For a while, no one says anything. Then a younger rider nods toward him. A signal passes through the line. Someone slows his horse. Someone else reaches up, gently eases the body down from the saddle. It hits the ground with the weight of something you've carried too far. There is no mourning, no weeping, no speeches, just a few deep breaths and the smell of sweat, leather, and distance. They don't stop long. A shallow hole is dug between 2 stones. The body is wrapped in whatever cloth can be spared. The face is covered. Rocks are stacked over the torso, not to mark the grave. To keep the wolves out, a dog sniffs nearby. Someone throws a pebble. It backs off, but not far. It knows the smell. It knows the rhythm. You stand a few paces away, hands tucked into your cloak, eyes lowered, not from grief, from wind. The dead man's name was Beitar. He wasn't close to you. But you remember how he laughed when the soup boiled over 3 nights ago. You remember he shared his tobacco when yours ran out. You remember the way he leaned slightly left when he rode, and how his horse had adjusted to compensate. You don't speak. You don't have to. The rocks say enough. He's gone, and the road isn't. There's no monument, no sword stuck into the dirt, no song, not even a prayer, just motion. Someone checks the saddlebags for supplies. They're redistributed. His water goes to one rider, his blanket to another, his horse. It stays with the column. It doesn't seem to mind. Death here isn't special. It's not tragic. It's not noble. It's expected, and it's treated accordingly. A transaction, a subtraction, a rearrangement of loads. The Mongol Empire doesn't pause to bury its dead. It merely adjusts. A few miles later, you pass a line of low rocks stacked against a hillside. They're irregular, spaced just far enough apart to be meaningless to the untrained eye. But to those who know, each stack is a name, a face, a moment where someone stopped, just long enough to remember, and then forgot again. You ask someone how many of those there are across the empire. He shrugs. More than stars. Then he clicks his tongue, and his horse moves forward. You wonder what would happen if you died tomorrow. Who would lift you from the saddle? Who would stack your rocks? Would your name survive beyond the dogs who smell your body first? Probably not. But you don't find that thought bitter. Strangely, it comforts you. Because the road doesn't lie. The steppe never promised permanence. It promised wind, and sky, and motion. And if you fall, it promises to move around you, and continue. You once heard a general say victory is measured in cities, but history is measured in corpses. At the time, it sounded cruel. Now, it sounds like planning. You hear a story that night, shared around the fire in a voice too tired for drama, about a man who died during a siege. His foot slipped. He fell into a pit of sharpened stakes meant for the enemy. No one pulled him out. There was no time. By the next morning, the pit was covered in wood. The city fell a week later. He's not named in any scroll, but the bridge built over that pit still used today. You fall asleep thinking about rocks, not grave markers, just stones. Heavy, silent, weatherproof. A good legacy, not because it tells your story, but because it gives the wind something to whisper around. The next morning, no one mentions Bartar, not out of disrespect, out of necessity. There's a river to cross, a bridge to fix, a delay to avoid. Someone asks if you have the ledger from the last village. You do, you pass it over, you ride. The dog that sniffed at Batter's grave now trots beside a different horse. Its tail wags. At midday, someone laughs, not loudly, just enough to remind you that death doesn't own the space it lands in. Not here, not for long. A bird flies overhead. It circles. It sees the line of riders below dusty, hungry, focused. It sees no banners, no songs, no honour guards, just motion. Always motion. And a line of rocks, slowly fading into the hillside behind them. You don't remember your first ride. Not clearly, just flashes. The weight of the saddle, the cold of the leather, the fear and the rhythm. That moment when the earth stopped being beneath you and started being behind you. You were clumsy, stiff, too loud. The horse forgave you anyway. They always do at first. Now, years later, you've stopped counting the rides. You ride at dawn, you ride at dusk, you ride in silence, you ride in snow. You've ridden through arrows, wind, rain, smoke. You've ridden with your stomach empty and your eyes full of tears you didn't let fall. You've ridden beside men you never saw again, and behind boys who became ghosts before they became names. You don't ride for glory anymore. You ride because it's what you do, what you are, a body, a motion, a memory in transit. Your saddle creaks when you shift, it always has. But now, you creak with it. Your joints echo the leather. You don't wince when the wind hits your face. You welcome it. Because you've learned the wind is honest. It tells you where you are. What's ahead, what's behind. It doesn't flatter. It doesn't lie. It just moves. Like you. You haven't spoken in hours. No one has. Not because there's nothing to say, but because what could be said would only shrink what's already too large. There's peace in that silence. A kind of acknowledgement, a mutual understanding between men who've survived too long to pretend anymore. You don't need to talk. You just ride. Your horse knows the path better than you do. You let him choose it. He's older too, his gait slower, his breath deeper, but he's never stopped. Even when your weight has grown heavier with age, with memory, with things left undone, he's still carried you, and he will, until you fall. You pass a stretch of plain you've crossed before. The grass is shorter now, the stones stacked differently, the sky still massive, but softer somehow, like it's waiting for something. You exhale. It comes out like a sigh, not of pain, not of fear, just weight, leaving. You think of the men you've buried, not just in dirt, but in your memory. Men who shared their last piece of bread, men who bled into your coat, men who whispered names they knew would never reach home. You remember them in fragments, their boots, their laugh, the way they adjusted their belt before dismounting. They're gone, but somehow they still ride with you, tucked behind your ribs, between your thoughts, in the way you grip the reins when the wind shifts. You slow your horse near a ridge. The view is wide, too wide for any single man to hold, and yet, here you are. You dismount, your knees crack, you stretch, the ground beneath your feet feels uncommitted, like it might forget you the moment you leave. You're used to that. You sit, not like a soldier, like a man who's tired, really tired, the kind that sits not to rest, but to let go. No one's coming for you, no one's watching, no one's writing your name, and that, strangely, feels right, because the ride was never about being remembered. It was about being there, when the bridge needed guarding, when the scroll needed carrying, when the arrow needed to fly. You were there, and you did not fall. Your horse nudges your shoulder, not hard, just enough to say, "We're not done." You stand, you smile, the kind of smile that's too tired to lift your cheeks, but warm, real. You mount again, slower now, more deliberate, like a man placing himself in the last photograph hell ever appear in. The path ahead is quiet, dust, light, and a soft bend around a hill. You ride into it, and you realise this might be your last ride. You don't know it for sure, but your horse does. His steps change, softer, lower to the earth, like he's carrying not a man but a weight made of time. The wind picks up. It smells like cinnamon and pine and stories that never got told. You adjust your scarf, not because it's cold, but because it's habit, and habit is the last thing we let go of. You think, briefly, of your name, what it meant, what it means now, and then you think of your saddle, how it has shaped your body, how it holds the curve of your spine, how it has remembered you better than anyone else has. That's enough. That's more than enough. The hill levels, the sun dips, and you ride forward, not toward victory, not toward home, but toward quiet, the kind that doesn't ask who you were, just whether you showed up. There's something they never tell you. It's not death you'll notice first, it's forgetting, not others forgetting you. That happens quickly and quietly, like dust brushing off a saddle, but you forgetting them. At first, it's just names. You wake one morning and can't recall the boy who rode beside you for 2 years. You remember his laughter, but not who he laughed at. You remember his hand, missing a finger. Was it the left or the right the next week? You forget a woman's face. You know she existed. You remember her smell, her knife, the way she folded bread, but her eyes gone. You try to chase it, but it runs faster than your horse ever did, so you stop trying, and that's when it wins. No one marks the day you stop speaking. Maybe you still grunt, gesture, nod, but full sentences dry up like a river you used to drink from. Your tongue is heavy. Words feel unnecessary. You've seen the same expressions repeated for 20 winters. The face of hunger, the face of mourning that isn't allowed to slow the march, the face of someone riding away without a second glance. You don't need to describe them. You've become one. Once, someone asked if you were happy. You laughed. Then you realised you hadn't laughed in months. Your chest creaked from the effort. Your ribs didn't understand the command. You told him I'm still moving. He nodded. That was enough. At night, you begin to talk to things that don't speak back, not out of madness, out of rhythm. The wind, the saddle, your own boots, worn thin at the heel. You ask them how far you've gone. They never answer. but sometimes, if you're very quiet, you can hear them sigh. You start seeing ghosts in the firelight, not frightening ones, just familiar. Someone stirs a pot, you look over, and for half a second, it's a man you buried 5 summers ago. Another brushes past you with a sack of grain, and you feel the pull of a hand that once pulled you out of freezing mud. You know they're not real, but part of you doesn't care, because they still recognise you, and that's more than you can say for the living. One morning, you hear your own name, you turn, no one's speaking. You realise you haven't heard it in so long, you forgot what it felt like in the air. You whisper it, just once, it lands flat, like a knife dropped into soft earth. No echo, no reaction, even your horse keeps walking. Eventually, the world begins to blur at the edges. You don't know if it's age, fatigue, or the fact that so many places look the same now. You look at a city and can't tell if you burned it or protected it. You meet a boy who insists you helped him once. You nod. You don't remember. You hope you were kind. You dream in sounds now, not images. A woman crying behind canvas, a hawk scream before an ambush, the thud of meat dropped into dust, the hiss of something cooking over dung fire, the silence after someone fails to return. You wake up unsure if you're remembering or reliving, but it no longer matters, because either way, you're still here. One night, your horse slows without command. He looks over his shoulder. He knows. You don't, but he does. He's been carrying this version of you longer than anyone else. He felt you shrink in the saddle, felt you go quiet. He doesn't stop. He just adjusts to your weight, to your breathing, to the way your head no longer turns towards sunrise. They bury a man the next morning. You watch from the ridge. You don't go down, not because you're afraid, but because you've seen too many burials, and because deep down you wonder if they're burying the right one. You sit beside the fire that night and stare into the coals. Someone plays a song on a stringed instrument, soft, broken, out of tune. It's beautiful. You feel something stir behind your ribs, not sadness, not memory, something older, something like quiet. Someone asks if you're still riding tomorrow. You nod, but you don't know if that's true. You've started dreaming while awake, and waking with your hands already gripping the reins. You wonder what happens when even the horse forgets your rhythm, when the saddle forgets your weight, when the wind forgets your scent, when the road no longer remembers the sound of your boots. You don't fear that moment, you just hope it's gentle, not dramatic. No banners, no final charge, just a soft tilt forward, the blink of a tired animal, and a slow breath into stillness. The empire will go on, caravans will pass, messengers will gallop by, the fires will stay lit, the dogs will dig, the maps will expand, the stones will pile, and someone, somewhere, will hear a name they don't recognise and pretend, just for a moment, that maybe it was yours. But here's the final truth no one writes into scrolls you don't need to be remembered. You never did. The horse doesn't remember your name, but he remembers where you shifted your weight when rivers froze. He remembers the sound you made in your sleep. He remembers which hand you reached for the reins with when you were too tired to open your eyes. The saddle doesn't know your stories, but it still holds the curve of your back. Even after you're gone, it will keep that shape as if waiting for you to return. Just one more ride. The road won't say thank you, but it will carry someone else in your place. Someone younger, faster, still full of questions you no longer need answered. And maybe, one day, that rider will pass the stone that marks the place where you fell, and not even know, but the wind will. The wind will slow for a moment. It will swirl once around the marker, and then move on. Because in the Mongol Empire, death doesn't echo. It just folds into motion, and motion, as you've always known, never stops. And when the last trace of you fades, when your scent is gone from the saddle, when your boots have crumbled, when even your horse has forgotten how your hands once rested on his neck, you'll still be here. Not in stone, not in stories, but in the tilt of a broken path someone steps around without knowing why. In a quiet moment beside the fire when no one speaks, in the slight pause before a new rider mounts, and in that moment, so small it vanishes before it begins, you are not gone. You're simply part of the machine now, unseen, unnamed, essential. And like all the others before you, you ride on. You did. And now, you ride. One last time. You don't know it's your last ride. No music plays. No horns sound. You simply fail to wake. The horse waits for a while, then moves on. A dog circles your body, licks your glove, then leaves. By morning, the wind has already swept your name off the dust. A few stones are stacked over your chest, not for memory, just to keep the vultures honest. No one writes your story, but the road keeps moving, and the Empire doesn't look back.